Put the apartment in my mom's name. It'll be safer that way. He didn't look at me when he said it, just kept cutting his chicken into neat, identical squares like he was managing a spreadsheet instead of our marriage. I held my fork in midair. For a second, I thought I misheard him. Safer for who? I asked quietly. Daniel shrugged. For everyone. You know how unstable things are right now. My mom's worried. My mom's worried. After 20 years of marriage, his mother was still the third voice at our table, even when she wasn't physically sitting there. I looked at his hands. I used to love those hands. Back when we were 24 and living in that awful one-bedroom apartment with peeling wallpaper and a radiator that screamed all winter. Back when we slept on a mattress on the floor and ate pasta 3 nights in a row because that's all we could afford. Back when we were equal. We're a team, he used to say. Back then, I believed that meant something. Now I wasn't sure what team I had been playing for. Okay, I said. He finally looked up. Okay? I'll transfer it. His shoulders dropped slightly. Relief. He smiled, small, satisfied. I knew you'd understand. That smile told me more than the sentence. He thought this was already decided. He thought I would fight a little, maybe cry, maybe argue, and then eventually agree like I always did. What he didn't see was that something inside me had already shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of losing him. I was afraid of losing myself. When we bought that apartment 10 years ago, we had nothing but debt and optimism. The down payment came from my savings and the inheritance my grandmother left me. $87,000 she had spent her life protecting. The bank approved the mortgage because of my income, my credit score, my stability. They suggested putting the apartment in my name to simplify the process. Daniel laughed. What difference does it make? We're married. I wanted to believe that marriage meant shared security. His mother disagreed. A man should be the owner, Margaret would say during Sunday dinners, pushing her thin lips together. It doesn't look right otherwise. I would smile, pour her more tea. I was very good at being agreeable. Over the years, Daniel searched for himself. Furniture imports, car parts distribution, an online store that never went live, consulting for his brother's construction supply company. Each idea started with excitement. Each one ended quietly. And every time there was a gap, I filled it. I worked my way up from junior accountant to senior financial controller, took night classes, accepted extra projects, negotiated contracts. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, our daughter's school fees, insurance, property taxes. He contributed when he could, which wasn't often. A year ago, he invested again. This one is solid, he told me. My brother has connections. The margins are insane. I didn't argue. I just asked one question. How much? He didn't answer directly. Later that month, he came into the bedroom while I was folding laundry. Can you wire me $200,000, just short term? I looked at him carefully. We have a mortgage payment next week. It's temporary. No. He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He withdrew, and something about that withdrawal felt more dangerous than anger. Then Margaret started coming over more often, without calling. She would sit at my kitchen table and stir her tea endlessly, whispering with Daniel in the hallway. I would walk in and they would stop talking mid-sentence. You don't need to hear the words to know you are the topic. That's when I began checking things. Not dramatically, quietly. Bank statements, transaction histories, transfers. And I saw it. Large, regular payments from our joint account to Daniel's brother. Not $200,000, not once. Over $2 million in a year. Without discussion, without consent, without transparency. When I confronted him lightly, he brushed it off. It's strategic, don't overreact. Overreact. That word is a warning sign in any marriage. And now, here we were, at the dinner table. Put the apartment in my mom's name. He framed it as protection, as responsibility, as maturity. But I understood something he didn't. If the business collapsed, creditors would look for assets. If the apartment was in Margaret's name, I would have no legal claim to the only stable thing I had built in 20 years. I would become disposable. That's when I nodded, because arguing would have given him time to adjust the story. Agreeing gave me time to move. That night, he slept peacefully. I didn't. I stared at the ceiling and ran numbers in my head. Mortgage balance, equity, retirement accounts, joint liabilities, exposure. By morning, I wasn't emotional. I was precise. At 9 a.m., I was sitting across from a notary. "You're transferring ownership?" she asked. "Yes," I said calmly, but the documents in front of her were not a gift deed. They were a consultation filing for asset division. An hour later, I sat in a lawyer's office. He reviewed the bank statements slowly. "You're aware of these transfers?" he asked. "I am now." He looked at me carefully. "If you had transferred the property, you would have significantly weakened your position." I nodded. "I know." For the first time in months, I felt steady, not betrayed, not hysterical, clear. When Daniel came home that evening, he loosened his tie and smiled faintly. "Did you handle it?" "Yes," I said. I placed a folder on the kitchen table. "What's that?" "Paperwork." "For the transfer?" "For separation of assets." He stared at me. The color drained from his face slowly, like someone turning down the saturation on a screen. "What are you doing?" "The same thing you are," I replied calmly, thinking about safety. And in that moment, I realized something profound. He had underestimated me for years, but I had underestimated myself longer, and that was about to change. Daniel didn't touch the folder for a long time. He just stared at it like it might explode. "You're overreacting," he finally said, but his voice had already lost its certainty. "I don't think I am." His jaw tightened. "You went to a lawyer without talking to me? You transferred over $2 million from our joint account without talking to me." Silence. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was heavy, the kind that presses against your ears. "That was an investment," he snapped, "for the family, for your brother, for our future." I held his gaze. "Our future doesn't include me owning the roof over my head?" He ran a hand through his hair, that old nervous habit I used to find endearing. "You're twisting this." "No," I said calmly. "I'm finally untwisting it." He laughed once, short and sharp. "This is because of my mom, right? You've always had a problem with her." I almost smiled. Margaret was never the root. She was just the amplifier. "She wants stability for you," I said evenly. "So do I. The difference is, I don't want it at my expense." He stood up abruptly, pacing the kitchen. "You think I'm trying to screw you over?" "I think you're scared," I said, "and scared men make selfish decisions." That hit him. He stopped walking. "You think I'm selfish?" "I think you're protecting yourself." "And you're not?" he shot back. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was, I was. But for the first time in 20 years, I wasn't apologizing for it. The next day, Margaret arrived before noon. She didn't knock gently, she hammered. I opened the door. Her eyes scanned my face like she was looking for weakness. "What have you done?" she demanded. "I'm having coffee. Would you like some?" "Don't play games with me." I stepped aside anyway. She walked in like she owned the place, which, ironically, was exactly what she wanted. Daniel stood behind her, quiet, always quiet when she led the charge. "You went to a lawyer," she said, dropping her purse on the table, "after everything my son has done for you." "For me?" I asked softly. "He invested for your future. He works day and night, and you respond by threatening divorce?" "I didn't file for divorce." "Asset division is the same thing." "No," I said calmly, "it's protection." "Protection from your own husband?" she scoffed. "What kind of marriage is that?" The honest kind, I thought. The kind where the wife reads the bank statements. The apartment stays in this family, she said sharply. It is in this family, I replied. My name is on it. Her lips thinned. You always thought you were better than him. That one landed differently, because it wasn't about property anymore. It was about power. I never thought I was better, I said quietly. I just worked harder. Daniel flinched. Margaret stepped closer to me. You humiliate him. You make him feel small. I didn't make him transfer $2 million without telling me. You would have said no. Yes, I agreed. She stared at me, and for the first time in 2 decades, I didn't lower my eyes. I was silent for 20 years, I said softly, not generous, silent. That shut her up. Silence is powerful when you stop using it against yourself. That evening, Daniel and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table again. No mother, no audience. You're really willing to blow this up? He asked. I'm willing to live honestly. You think I plan to ruin you? I studied his face carefully. Not a villain, not a mastermind, just a man who hated feeling inadequate. When did you start resenting me? I asked. He looked surprised. I don't resent you. Then why did you start moving money without telling me? His jaw flexed. I was tired of asking permission. Permission. The word echoed. I'm your wife, I said. Not your bank. You always controlled the finances. Because you didn't want to. That's not true. Then why didn't you learn? That hurt him more than anything else I'd said. He looked down. My mom kept saying, he hesitated. Kept saying what? That if things went bad, you'd kick me out. That since it's in your name, you could. I stared at him. So you tried to secure it before I could? I just wanted to level the field. Level the field by transferring the apartment to his mother, by draining the joint account, by making me legally vulnerable. And if I had signed? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. A week later, we met at a small cafe halfway between our offices. Neutral ground, no raised voices, just coffee and consequences. You're serious about separation? He asked. I'm serious about clarity. He stirred his coffee endlessly. I feel like a failure, he said suddenly. It wasn't dramatic, it was exhausted. You earn more, you're respected, you're stable. I keep trying things and they fall apart. That's not my fault. I know. But you wanted me smaller, I said, so you could feel taller. He looked up sharply. That's not fair. It's accurate. He swallowed. I was scared. Of what? That you'd wake up one day and realize you didn't need me. I held his gaze. I did wake up. The words hung there. Not cruel, just true. 2 weeks later, the phone rang. It was Daniel. The company's under investigation, he said quietly. My brother's being audited. They're freezing accounts. I closed my eyes briefly. And? They're reviewing personal asset exposure. There it was. The reason. The panic. If the apartment had been transferred, he added slowly, it could have been implicated. Yes, I said. Silence. Thank you, he said finally. Not for staying, not for loving him, for protecting the asset. I didn't do it for you, I replied calmly. I know. And that might have been the first honest exchange we'd had in years. Something had shifted between us. Not love, not forgiveness, reality. For the first time, he saw that I wasn't trying to control him. I was trying to survive him. And for the first time, I saw that he wasn't evil. He was insecure. Insecurity in a man with access to your finances is more dangerous than malice, because it disguises itself as protection. We didn't scream, we didn't slam doors, we did something far more uncomfortable. We started talking without his mother's voice in the background, and for a brief moment, it felt like we might either rebuild this marriage honestly or end it without destroying ourselves in the process. But one thing was clear: I would never again nod out of fear, only out of strategy. The business collapsed 3 weeks later. Not dramatically, not with sirens and headlines, just paperwork, frozen accounts, unpaid suppliers, an official notice that Daniel's brother's company was filing for bankruptcy protection. Daniel sat at the kitchen table holding the letter like it was written in a foreign language. If the apartment had been in Mom's name, he started. They could have tried to use it as leverage, I finished. He nodded slowly. For debt restructuring or collateral pressure. I didn't say I told you so, not because I was kind, because I was done proving myself. For the first time in 20 years, the power balance wasn't invisible. It was measurable. He had gambled with borrowed confidence. I had protected what I built. Margaret came over that weekend, not storming this time, careful, measured. I heard about the company, she said quietly, sitting down without demanding tea. Daniel stayed in the hallway. He wasn't hiding, he just didn't want to referee. You were right not to transfer it, she admitted finally. That sentence cost her something. I could see it. I nodded once. It wasn't about being right. She studied me in a way she hadn't before, not as competition, not as threat, as equal. You scared him, she said softly. I scared him by existing? You're strong, she replied. He isn't used to that. I wasn't strong, I said. I was silent. Silence looks like strength to people who don't listen. Margaret exhaled slowly. You're not divorcing him? I haven't decided. It was the most honest answer I could give. Daniel got a stable job 2 months later, mid-level operations manager at a logistics firm. Salary lower than he once imagined for himself, but predictable, consistent, responsible. He didn't celebrate the offer, he just signed it. That alone told me something had shifted. We sat down with a mediator and drafted a post-nuptial agreement. Separate accounts, clear percentages, documented responsibilities, defined property ownership. No vague, we're a team promises, just signatures. Security built on clarity instead of emotion. When the mediator slid the final papers toward us, Daniel hesitated. This feels cold, he said. It feels honest, I replied. He signed. One evening, a few months later, we were sitting on the couch, not fighting, not pretending, just existing. I thought you were going to leave, he said suddenly. I almost did, he swallowed. Why didn't you? I thought about that carefully. Because I didn't want to run, I said. I wanted to see if you could grow. And? You're trying. That was the most I could offer. Love at 45 doesn't look like it did at 24. It isn't adrenaline. It isn't reckless loyalty. It's respect. And respect can disappear quietly if you're not paying attention. The night he asked me to transfer the apartment, something inside me cracked. Not love, illusion. The illusion that staying quiet was noble. The illusion that protecting him meant shrinking myself. The illusion that stability required submission. I had nodded, but I hadn't agreed. I had bought time. Time to understand the numbers. Time to understand him. Time to understand myself. A year later, the mortgage balance was lower. My retirement account was healthier. Daniel paid his share consistently. Margaret no longer mentioned property. Not once. And something else had changed. I no longer monitored every move with anxiety. Not because I trusted blindly, but because everything was transparent. And transparency is quieter than control. Sometimes I think about that dinner, about how easily I could have signed, how one signature would have erased 20 years of discipline. I don't blame him anymore. Not fully. Fear makes people irrational. Insecurity makes them reckless. But love does not require self-erasure. That was the lesson. The scariest thing that night wasn't losing my husband. It was almost losing respect for myself. And once you lose that, no house, no marriage, no title can restore it. When he said, "Put the apartment in my mom's name," I nodded. And in that nod, I stopped being afraid. Not of divorce, not of loneliness, not of starting over. I was afraid of only one thing: becoming convenient. I didn't become softer. I didn't become cruel. I became clear. And clarity is powerful. If you were sitting at that table, fork in your hand, and the person you built your life with asked you to give up the only thing that guaranteed your independence, would you sign? Or would you nod and write your own version of the paperwork instead? Because sometimes the bravest yes is the one that buys you time to say no.